It's Saturday with Ted on In-Depth Radio, News Talk 1010.
You know, I've always believed, seriously, that in life, we all need two things. We need an editor, somebody who walks around with us before we say anything, and we clear it with them and say, should I say this, should I say this? And then, on top of that, we need a publicist. Someone who can go out there and explain to people who we are, why we're there, why it's important for them to speak with us and to know us. Publicists are, if they're good, they're an amazing tool for artists and people who are putting together projects. It doesn't matter whether it's a fundraiser for a hospital. And if they're bad, they make people in the media crazy. Fortunately, a good one has joined us. Daniel Shehori, along with his brother Stephen, have written a book called Media Whore, a shockingly simple guide to becoming your own kick-ass publicist. Do you agree with me? Everybody needs a publicist.
Yes, but imagine now if you could be that very same person yourself, as well as an editor. Because if a self-editor is equally as important, as you said.
Yeah, and one of the points that you make at I guess what probably the key point is that you can be a self-publicist.
And in many regards, you probably should, as in, especially when you're just starting out. It's a good tool to learn as you're going along. There's many excellent publicists out there, and they're going to cost you money. But when you are starting out, you may as well go about to learn some of this information as well.
And your brother, Steve, has joined us from Los Angeles. Steve, thanks very much for being here as well.
No, it's my pleasure. Happy to be here.
How did you guys get involved in this business?
How did we get involved? We started actually as writers and performers somewhat, and we realized very quickly that with some of the projects that we were trying to get off the ground, if we didn't try and get the word out ourselves, that there may have been not have been other people out there who were going to be willing to do that, especially for little or no money, doing that on our behalf. So quickly we learned some basic tools, and over time figured out how to finesse those and finagle them until they made sense, and we started getting some reviews and some press and all sorts of media attention for these little shows that we were doing.
We hear an awful lot lately of not only just publicists regarding publicists, but also the spin doctors, the people who will tell you when you get bad publicity, this is how to spin your way out of it.
That's very true, Ted, and we always caution that we have some friends in the industry who have sometimes taken it the wrong way when a bad review has come in. I'm sure it feels good in the short term to be able to contact a reviewer and say, you know what, you son of a gun, you this and that, and only harsher words, obviously. And I'm sure it feels good in the moment, but in the long term, that really can come back to haunt you. So we sort of caution against that and sort of explain that, this isn't something personal. They don't dislike you if they dislike something that you've done. They're just doing their job, and you've got to give them that opportunity to do that.
What would you do if you're Donald Trump's publicist? Other than slit your wrists.
There's a good example of somebody who believes, my perception of him is that he believes that he is both a very good self-publicist as well as a self-editor. And it appears that he could benefit from both those things that you said off the top. That's a strange one. I don't even know how to begin talking about him.
The expression less is more really applies when it comes to press releases. Because oftentimes I'll receive stuff and it's like 4 or 5 pages long and think I can't read all this stuff.
Absolutely.
That's right.
That's something we caution about as well. It's like the old journalism expression, don't bury the lead. You want to get everything out in the first paragraph that's important. And we joke about this in our book, and it's not in a disrespectful way, but we say you want to treat the media, anybody who's reading this, like a toddler who has ADD. And not because they are that, but because they have so much content thrown at them, right. Press releases and press kits and phone calls every day that you don't want to waste their time. You want to be respectful and be short and sweet, to the point, and get it all out and throw some interesting angles at them as to why this thing you're doing is of interest. And a lot of people sort of fail to do that. And the example we often use is they'll receive a release that basically says, local band playing show at local venue. And there's nothing really that pops off the page there, especially if you have 5 pages of explaining that one basic thing. That doesn't sound very interesting. Right. That's so easily avoidable.
Daniel and Stephen Shehori are the co-authors of Media Whore, a shockingly simple guide to becoming your own kick-ass publicist. How important is it, and how careful do you have to be when you embellish?
That's a great question. Going back to the term that you used earlier about spinning, we don't encourage that at all. We encourage you to look at what you're doing. We're assuming that you have a lot of love for what you're doing. So that would suggest that there's a lot of things you could say about this that are true, that are honest. We encourage you to try and resonate with the human being at the other end of the computer or the phone that you're contacting in the media and say, look, this is what I really love about what I'm doing. This is why it's important. This is why I think it's fantastic. And there's no spin to that if you're just being sincere and honest.
You don't have to write in a dispassionate journalism style, but you don't have to come across as a carnival barker either. I think that's the key, is finding that sweet spot.
When you're talking about being a self-publicist, is it not still important to be able to sit down with someone and say, listen, I'm selling this idea, or I'm selling myself. These are the points that I'm trying to make, and in order to and just put everything down on a piece of paper, because there may be something that you think is not important, but it is, and conversely, something that you think is important, and it's not.
Of course. So when people would speak to Steve and I, we just have close to 20 years of trial and error where we've cut through that. And now we can say, when people would tell us, okay, tell me about your project if we're going to help you with it. And they'll say just that, well, there's this, and this. And then they'll be, well, there's this other thing. I was like, no, that other thing is what we're going to move to one of the top of the topics here, because that's great. And maybe you hadn't considered that. Very similar to hiring a real estate agent. Now, you should be the best person to sell your home because you know everything about it and you can tell people all the great things about your home. But a real estate agent is trained to know the finer points that a buyer might be looking for. And this is what we're encouraging as well. I
know that when I get press releases for various artists, and we work with all kinds of publicists. Jane Harbury is probably the best in my mind, because she knows what to do when she delivers that piece of paper for you. Not only the facts there, but there's always something interesting in there. For me, as an interviewer, gives me the opportunity to open up a conversation with someone without immediately saying, okay, let's talk about your CD, or let's talk about this concert.
That's right. And
when you can do that, then you can open up a rapport with the people person you're interviewing. There's a comfort level for both. You know the interview is going to go much better.
That's right. And dealing with this particular show over the years, I've come to learn the type of things that you personally would like to talk about. Mm-hmm. So I know in advance that, Ted has had somebody like this on before. Ted likes talking about this. Great, I'm going to suggest this. If it's something that I believe is completely out of your wheelhouse, and very few things are, to your credit, I find that you are willing to talk to anybody who has anything interesting to talk about.
I'm lonely.
But that benefits us and them. So you're open-minded. This show is open-minded in that format. So it's somewhat of a blessing to anybody, not just people in the arts where we started out doing, but this is, you have everybody on. You have politicians, you have chefs, you have dancers, musicians, you have everybody.
You do this for a living. You're a publicist, and you're out there selling people, and you're out there selling events and concepts. Now you sit down, your brother and you, and decide, okay, we're going to do this book. So now we have to convince people to get us on their show. Being the self-publicist, you wrote about it in the book.
Yeah.
But now when you got to do it,
and we have to do it.
Which was easier, writing about it or doing it?
Well, that's something Dan insisted on doing, actually, because we got the book through the great folks at Self Counsel Press. And Dan approached them later on in the process and said, look, this is going to be weird if we are the ones being the publicists for our own book.
Yeah, we'll look like
and
hypocrites.
They conceded that. And so, we've been approaching it that way. And Dan has been pounding the pavement on this himself.
We have to. And this is not to sound arrogant, but this is just to show that this does work. In this city alone, there are thousands upon thousands of people that would love to be sitting in this chair right now talking to you about things that they love doing. So we're very grateful for this, and this is something that is again, it's been many, many years of a process. It was born out of the Toronto scene, and we're now sharing it with the world, and we're very happy to be doing that.
What are the two you're working on right now that will capture my imagination, and that I may see on my desk sometime soon?
We've got the book coming out on September 12th, next Tuesday, and then to sort of coincide with that, we've got the Media Horror Seminar. It's a 5-hour seminar we're doing next Saturday, September 16th, from 12 to 5 at the Second City, the John Candy Box Theater. And anybody interested can go to mediahorror.me or mediahorror.me.
All right, so mediahorror.me for all this information. And, of course, if somebody's looking for a good publicist.
I hope so. Or, again, learn this yourself. It's in your best interest. You get to come talk to people like Ted, and it's a mutual beneficial thing for everybody involved.
Daniel
Shehori, but we will take your money.
Yeah, well, why wouldn't you? And Stephen as well. Thank you both. Have a great weekend.